So I wanted to introduce my latest project, Has Dan Tested Positive? When I say has Dan tested positive, I mean how positive was he in his latest press conference? So what I've done with the help of Harry Roth is I've repurposed the positivity meter to run on Dan Andrews' press conferences. And what this does is on a daily basis, it'll tell us how positive or negative the press conference was. Then, once I get the results, I send them over to Harry and he creates a Photoshop of Dan either smiling or frowning, depending on the day's result. The overall goal of this is to humanize some of the figures we're seeing and also to give an accessible metric to people that don't necessarily have the time to listen to a press conference, but want to get an idea of the general tone of how Victoria is going. So what we're doing is, we've got the daily update and we've also now got a long-term graph, which shows us, the ups and downs of a pandemic. And I think gives a really good idea of how a lot of Victorians are feeling and what we've gone through. So I'll give you a quick rundown of this graph. So this is the beginning of wave 2. And you can see here around the Tower lockdown and the lockdown of selected suburbs and moving into stage 3, there was a lot of up and down with Victorians really not sure what was going on and whether it was going to get worse, whether it was going to get better. And the sentiment of Dan Andrews' press conferences really reflected that too. But the thing that stands out initially as well is that leading up to the stage 4 restrictions here, there was consistent, really low negativity. And I think obviously we were seeing lots of cases, the case numbers were going up and we were not sure why it wasn't getting better. And it's clear here that, that negative sentiment was reflected in the press conferences. But since stage 4, there's been a real upwards trend where we've seen the most positive press conferences, 3 in a row here, since the beginning of wave 2 or even before that. And there have been some dips, but overall it's a lot more positive than it was before stage 4. And again, I think we're starting to see some promising numbers, and overall I think Victorians are doing a great job, and that was reflected in Dan Andrews' press conferences, where you're hearing a lot more around, a majority of people doing the right thing. And I think, that's reflected in the sentiment, it's reflected in the case numbers, and I think it's also just reflected in, hopefully, the general mood around Victoria. Overall, that's a summary of what we've been working on at WellPod and Has Dan Tested Positive. If you're after daily updates of something a bit different than case numbers, go check it out on Instagram. And otherwise, thank you so much for listening and stay positive.